Hello everyone and welcome to the channel. I am your Lord of the Rings fanatic. Today we'll be talking about The Hunt for Gollum. If you're wondering what's in my pocket, string or nothing, folks. String or nothing. All right, so this is an exciting project for me because it is a Lord of the Rings story. It happens during the Fellowship of the Ring. And really, we have the whole team back for an encore presentation. We've got Peter Jackson producing, we've got Andy Serkis directing and playing Gollum, of course. We've got Ian Mckellen confirmed as coming back as Gandalf. Who else could play Gandalf? And we've got Viggo Mortensen, who we're going to talk about a little bit later in the program. And by the way, we'll go to the phones a little bit later on. I've got a phone call. A ringer has a question about Gollum's internal conflict, so we'll get into that. So when does this story happen? So this story actually happens between Bilbo's 111st birthday. I don't know half of you as well as I should like, and I like less than half of you as well as you deserve. And the time the Fellowship of the Ring enters the mines of Moria. Now that's a 17-year period. You know, we don't want to see 3 movies of Aragorn hunting Gollum and Sméagol arguing with each other in the marshes, right? So it's confirmed now, it's only 1 movie. It was Ian Mckellen last year in an interview who had said that it would be 2 movies, but it turns out Ian Mckellen was wrong. So it was Philippa Boyens who has said that no, it's only 1 movie, but Warner Brothers does have another live-action movie in development, and we don't know what that will be. They do have the rights to The Lord of the Rings, so, you know, it could be a nugget out of the appendices of the unabridged version where you get a lot of good stuff, right? So what do we know about this story of the Hunt for Gollum from The Lord of the Rings? Aragorn tells the story at the Council of Elrond, both in the books and the movies. Aragorn said to them, "If a man must needs walk in sight of the Black Gate, then perils he will have. I too despaired at last, and I began my homeward journey. And then by fortune I came suddenly upon what I sought, the marks of soft feet beside a muddy pool. But now the trail was fresh and swift, and it led not to Mordor, but away. Along the skirts of the dead marshes I followed it. And then I had him, lurking by a stagnant pool, peering in the water as the dark eve fell. I caught him, Gollum. He was covered in green slime. He will never love me, I fear, for he bit me, and I was not gentle. Nothing more did I ever get from his mouth than the marks of his teeth. I deemed it the worst part of all my journey, the road back, watching him day and night, making him walk before me with the halter on his neck, gagged until he was tamed by lack of food and drink, driving him ever towards Mirkwood. I brought him there at last and gave him to the elves, for we agreed that this should be done, and I was glad to be rid of his company, for he stank. For my part, I hope never to look upon him again, but Gandalf came and endured long speech with him." So this story will be centered on Gollum's internal conflict, really Sméagol and Gollum's internal conflict, and perhaps the story of how Sméagol becomes Gollum, his transformation, his character arc of how he becomes Gollum. We know that Sméagol was a Stewart Hobbit who found the ring. Well, it was Déagol who found the ring in 2463 in the Anduin River, and Sméagol killed him for it because it was his 32nd birthday. This would be a natural place to start the story, setting the scene with the Stewart Hobbits and Sméagol before he finds the ring. You know, in some ways, I hope they don't start it that way, because we already had a great sequence in The Return of the King where we see Déagol and Sméagol find the ring, and the story of how Sméagol becomes obsessed with the ring and goes under the Misty Mountains and becomes Gollum. You know, if you're going to tell Sméagol's entire story, that would be a natural place to start. But really, as a writer, I would prefer to start on Aragorn, and especially if you've got Viggo Mortensen playing the role. So I'd like to see it open on Gandalf and Aragorn, and you see Aragorn begin the hunt, and then cut to Barad-dûr, where Gollum is being tortured by Sauron. It would be fantastic to see Gollum giving up the information, Baggins the Shire, and this is the inciting incident that really sends the Dark Riders to the Shire, that begins the story, or the rising action of the Fellowship of the Ring. All right, let's talk about Viggo Mortensen. So Viggo Mortensen did a couple of interviews in 2024, and basically he wouldn't say that he was going to do the role. So Viggo Mortensen had said basically that he's too old to play Aragorn. and that was a problem, and it really wouldn't fit into the film because, of course, he's aged. It's been, 23 years since the making of The Lord of the Rings. And so that was a concern for him. So after that, we saw all of these articles coming out about using de-aging to get both Ian McKellen and Viggo Mortensen, even Orlando Bloom, to look a little younger. Now, I have mixed feelings about this. I think you do too. Viggo Mortensen must play Aragorn, right? But the problem is, if you look at movies like The Dial of Destiny, I really did appreciate seeing the de-aged or the younger Harrison Ford in those scenes. But it is a little cartoonish, isn't it? It's not quite real. So hopefully they don't overdo it with the de-aging process. Less is more, guys. Less is more. Perhaps the technology has come along a little bit since then. The other issue is Viggo Mortensen wants to see the script, and the script is being written right now. But really, I think Viggo was concerned enough about the story that he wanted to see the script first before saying yes. And I can't fault him for that. But basically, if they don't get Viggo to do it, man, they're going to lose a big chunk of their audience. And by the way, the issue with Ian McKellen is he said, yes, 100% he's going to do it. But you better hurry up. He's 85 years old. All right, let's talk about Gollum's internal conflict. Now, this is of great interest to Peter Jackson, and it's no wonder that he's doing this project because he's talked about this on many occasions. So here's a quote from Peter Jackson. "The Gollum Schmeagol character has always fascinated me because Gollum reflects the worst of human nature. Whilst his Schmeagol side is arguably quite sympathetic, I think he connects with readers and film audiences alike because there's a little bit of both of them in all of us. We really want to explore his backstory and delve into those parts of his journey we didn't have time to cover in the earlier films. It's too soon to know who will cross his path, but suffice to say we will take our lead from Professor Tolkien." Now, this is of utmost interest to me because really what this is the Apollonian-Dionysian conflict. And this is man's primal nature versus our higher nature that is in constant conflict within all of us. And it was Robert Louis Stevenson who wrote about this in all of his works. And of course, we think of Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde, but of course, Treasure Island and Kidnapped also had these themes. So another story that could be dealt with in this movie is Gollum's relationship with Shelob, the spider. So Shelob is probably Ungoliant's last known offspring. And Ungoliant, of course, was the giant spider who drank the light of the trees, the two trees. Ungoliant was the ancient terror that helped Morgoth bring darkness to the world. Basically, during that missing 17-year period during the Fellowship of the Ring, Gollum had made some kind of alliance with Shelob and brought her food, perhaps young orcs. And that ties in later, of course, when he brings Frodo and Sam for her to kill and eat. So another scene that we will definitely see in the movie The Hunt for Gollum will be the orc attack on Thranduil's realm in Mirkwood. This was in 3018 of the Third Age. Now, this was really the battle that kicked off the War of the Ring. Sauron sent a force of orcs from Dol Guldur to attack Mirkwood. Now, this is Thranduil's forest kingdom of the elves. During this attack, Gollum escaped. And so this is a battle that will definitely be in the movie. You can't pass it up. There were a lot of casualties, and really it was the beginning of the War of the Ring. This attack showed that Sauron was moving openly again, marking one of the first direct military actions leading up to the War of the Ring. And at this time, the Nazgul were sent to hunt for the ring, and they were on their way to Bag End. So from Gollum's perspective, Aragorn really is the antagonist of this film. And as far as I'm concerned, I'd really like to see Aragorn have as much screen time or more screen time than Gollum to make it interesting. Now, if you guys have some ideas about story structure, some potential ideas or storylines that could come out in The Hunt for Gollum, then let me know down in the comments section. All right, let's go to the phones. Ted in LA, you're on the air.
Hello, Lord of the Rings fanatic.
Welcome to the show. Go ahead with your question.
Was there a moment when Smeagol could have overcome Gollum? And if he had, could he have sailed to Valinor alongside Bilbo and Frodo?
Could he have sailed to Valinor with Bilbo and Frodo? Wow. Well, to answer the first part of your question, yes, there was a pivotal moment where Sméagol won out over Gollum. Remember that scene when Sam, Frodo, and Gollum were on the stairs to Cirith Ungol? And Gollum was watching Frodo and Sam sleep. So in that moment, as Gollum watched Frodo sleeping, he felt a compassion towards him, and he reached out a trembling hand as if he was afraid to do it, and he touched Frodo's knee. And in that moment, Sméagol had won out over Gollum. But unfortunately, at that moment, Sam woke up, and Sam said, "Hey you, what are you doing there?" Tolkien had addressed this moment in a letter where he was discussing Frodo's inability to destroy the ring. And so this was Gollum's pivotal moment where Sméagol was winning out, and Tolkien had described this as the story's most tragic moment because Sam was unable to take pity on him and see the transformation that had occurred within him in this moment. And because of that failure, Gollum betrayed them to Shelob. So Tolkien believed in grace and mercy, and LOTR and the VALINOR were merciful. But if you go back to the Silmarillion and other writings, you'll see a lot of talk about fate and destiny. And so it was Gollum's fate to be in the right place at the right time as a catalyst of grace. Remember what Gandalf had said to Frodo. "My heart tells me that Gollum has some part to play yet, for good or ill, before this is over. The pity of Bilbo may rule the fate of many."
I guess Sméagol never had a chance.
Like Turin Turambar, he was mastered by destiny.
Hey, I gotta tell you, I love that Gollum Sméagol t-shirt.
Thank you so much, Ted. You can join me here at the Prancing Pony anytime. We'll have a pint. So like I said, this really is a Lord of the Rings project, and it's a great nostalgia film for people who love the trilogy and love the work of Peter Jackson. You know, a lot of people are concerned, especially since the War of the Rohirrim, which really was a bomb. It cost $30 million and only made $20 million. And in another video, we'll talk about The Hobbit and how The Hobbit was split into a trilogy, and did it deserve to be split into a trilogy, because it didn't necessarily do that well. It didn't necessarily get great reviews from us Lord of the Rings fans, right? And by the way, we'll talk about the Rings of Power as well in an upcoming video. So this will be Warner Brothers' challenge to revive the franchise, really to revive this brand, this Lord of the Rings IP, and make it fresh again, make it great again, right? We need more traditional stories to push this franchise forward, and the fans really want these to be based on Tolkien's works. And it'd be great if Warner Brothers could get the rights to the Silmarillion so we could see stories like Beren and Luthien, Turin Turambar, and others, right? So on this channel, we're going to go deep into the philosophy of Tolkien, and we're going to keep in mind his Christian faith. Tolkien was baptized Anglican in the Church of England, and he was a devout Catholic all his life. And we really need to look at Tolkien and his work in the time in which he lived as well. So we're going to be breaking down the facets of the Lord of the Rings and the brilliance of the world of the Lord of the Rings. Because really, we've lost a lot in storytelling over the years. TV and film today is really going for nihilism. And if you look at J.R.R. Martin, he doesn't believe in anything. This is just nihilism. This is just death and destruction and a new way to kill somebody. You know, we're always coming up with a new and unique way to kill somebody on screen, and that's what it's all about. But Tolkien was much deeper than that. He had a philosophy. He had a world. So remember to subscribe, like, hit the bell. We'll be bringing new content, and see you next week. Everything we do here is for you, the home viewer. Thank you so much for being with me.